Suno should be scared of this, and I think they are because they just changed their terms again to make something very clear, which is that if you get in legal trouble by using their service, you're on your own. I know. Payne, stop with the anti-AI scare tactics. If I worked for Suno, I would be scared right now because there's a law that's coming down the pipeline, potentially, that could change AI music forever.
As of today, the contract that its users have to sign says that if those users get sued, if something bad happens with the outputs that Suno generated for them, it's on you, little user. You have to deal with the lawsuit. You have to pay the lawyers' fees. We have Suno's chief music officer that just came out and had the audacity to announce that Suno is the good guy in this situation. What Suno has publicly said in regards to the claim that it had stolen all the music that it trained on. Suno said, quote, "It's no secret that the tens of millions of recordings that Suno's model was trained on presumably included recordings whose rights are owned by the plaintiffs in this case."
I mean, obviously Suno's admitted a bunch of times that they stole everyone's music. I wanted to show you from a third party, so you can trust Top Music Attorney, because she's an attorney and I'm not, that Suno did in fact modify their terms yet again, and I think that's a sign that they're maybe panicking about what I'm about to show you next.
Congress is targeting AI. It's the Clear Act, a bill that would require tech companies to disclose the copyrighted works used to train their AI models. If passed, the bill forces AI companies to file a notice with the Copyright Office, the Register of Copyrights, giving the list of all of the works that they trained on in their systems.
So we already know that they've stolen tens of millions of songs. They've admitted that. Top Music Attorney just explained that in the previous clip. And if this law passes, the Clear Act that Congress is pushing for right now, and these AI platforms have to disclose which works they stole and trained their platforms on, what does that lead to? All the stuff that I've been covering lately, for example, this AI detection technology, not my words. Again, Rasha Rahman claimed that he partnered with a company that is breaking down the DNA of these AI generated songs and tracing them back to their source materials. So if this act passes, what that could potentially mean is if you generate a song with AI and the AI platforms are disclosing who they train their models on, it could mean that either a label or an individual musician could trace back this AI stuff to their original music and then either take legal action or force people who are using that music to clear samples or force them to, share in the equity of their songs. It could be an absolute nightmare for people who are using generative AI. Maybe it won't pass. Either way, this is big news regardless of whether or not you are an AI user. Because if you're a musician, this matters for your intellectual property rights. If you are an AI user, this matters because this could affect your legal usage of the AI songs that you love so much. Here's another example. Sony is now aggressively cracking down on AI generated deepfakes. So these are deepfakes. They've removed 135,000 unauthorized tracks from streaming platforms. These are more blatant, but again, there's some stuff coming down the pipeline. I don't believe that the labels are fighting for us. The major labels are not fighting for artists. They're fighting for their own bottom line. They want to control AI, but in a really weird way, at least temporarily, they've become allies of musicians, because if they really push for artists to be fairly compensated for having their music trained on AI, it's going to benefit the labels more than it's going to benefit the average musician, especially signed musicians. But a lot of us could potentially take advantage of that and get something back for the intellectual property of ours that has been used without our permission, without properly compensating us or giving us any sort of equity. But as you can see here, look, the label is utilizing new detection technology to protect its artists' reputations. I don't believe all that. They're using it to protect their money, but they are using it. I think what's funny is that people in the comments, the pro AI folks will say, on the one hand, AI detection will never work. The technology is trash. It's not good enough. It's flawed. And then on the other hand, they'll say generative AI technology is so amazing and it's only getting better. So only one type of technology can evolve over time. I mean, what do the AI bros say? Adapt or die. But when we adapt by promoting ethical AI, when we adapt by using existing legal channels to defend our careers, when we develop our own technologies. They don't like that, even though we're adapting. However, I had some great interactions with AI lovers in the comment section of my last video about AI. I thought they would be petulant and triggered, but they were really supportive. I was wrong. They left some really kind comments. I'll show you some of them. Let me put on my glasses for these. The first comment says, "Hey, I love AI, but I also appreciate you staying up on the latest AI legal news. We may not agree on the ethics of AI, but as an AI user myself, I see the value in your videos. Thank you, Fina TV. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. This is a longer one. It says, AI really is the most important topic in the music business right now. The implications are so far reaching. I'm an AI fangirl myself, but I don't let my love for AI cloud my ability to learn more about the legal development surrounding it. I am keeping my mind open." Cool. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. I did get about 50 comments from AI fans arguing that the Mike Smith case, the case of the producer who is facing 5 years in prison for defrauding the streaming services with AI music and botted streams, has nothing to do with AI. And just to be clear, this is all information from the Justice Department of the United States. I'm not coming up with this myself, so let's just review it in case the receptive folks need some clarity or there was a sudden collective uptick of brain cells among the detractors. So in my video, I called it AI fraud. The reason I called it that is because the Justice Department called it fraud aided by AI. Not just in the title of this particular article that they released to the public, but right here, AI assisted fraud. This is a direct quote from U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. Number 2, Mike Smith generated hundreds of thousands of songs with artificial intelligence. Not hundreds, not thousands, hundreds of thousands of songs in order to spread out his botted views to make it look more authentic and fly under the radar. If he didn't have AI, he would have needed to make 33,000 songs a year. So if you think AI has nothing to do with this and wasn't absolutely a necessary component of this fraud, please drop a comment with your favorite recipe for lead paint soup. Thirdly, this is really the bombshell, and I don't see how anyone can argue against that, but I know they will. Co-conspirator 3 is named in these documents. Michael Smith, the defendant, eventually turned to an artificial intelligence to expand his fraudulent scheme and in turn his illicit proceeds. In or about 2018, Smith began working with the chief executive officer of an AI music company, Co-Conspirator 3, to create hundreds of thousands of songs. So even the Justice Department is making it very clear that AI was a major core component of this case. And as you can see right here, Michael Smith, the defendant, began manipulating the streams of AI-generated music. CC4 described the initial streams of the AI music as proof of concept. CC3, who is the CEO of the AI company Boomy, began providing Michael Smith, the defendant, with thousands of songs each week that Smith could upload to the streaming platforms. And lastly, yes, this case dates way back to 2017. The AI company owned by the Co-Conspirator 3 in this case went public in 2018. You figure the timeline out. Now let's talk more about AI and streaming, because this is also a really interesting development. Because a lot of people say, well, you can generate songs all day on AI platforms, but no one can perform them. Well, here's the plot twist. The Rundown AI said someone used Suno to generate a Japanese metal band called Neon Oni fake member bios, AI generated music videos. It said based in Tokyo on Spotify, and they built up to 800,000 listeners. However, and they were selling merch apparently. Yeah, my bad, 80,000 monthly listeners. Then somebody exposed them for creating AI generated music and videos and traced the creator's account to Europe, so they weren't in fact in Japan. What are we calling that? So we got into that whole conversation of scam versus not scam. If you create fake member bios for people that don't exist, and you market the band as human, and you market the band as ethnically, nationally, culturally one thing when it's really not that, what is that?
I don't know. I mean, I think I personally think it's unethical, but somebody's going to say, hey, it's just a character. Like, I can come up with a story. Like, I'm allowed to write a book about a character of African descent and lives in wherever. Like, I can make up this story. I think the issue here in music is the people receiving it. People think that it's an actual person. Like, if I write a story, it's a story.
Right.
On Spotify, the assumption is Well, I think currently the assumption is all these artists are real artists. I think I don't know. I think there just needs to be a label on if you're gonna create AI artists, AI music, like everything just needs to be labeled as such so that people know that they're not actually listening to a real person. And some people are not gonna care. But I think a label at least needs to be there.
Well, there are two plot twists. So, after getting exposed, according to the rundown, the AI prompter, they're calling them the creator, which kind of makes them sound like a deity. They say the creator's response: recruit 7 real musicians from actual Tokyo bands to perform the AI generated songs live. They've now played several live shows and have more on the books. From an interview with the band's creator, in an age where AI is taking everyone's jobs, this has actually created jobs. So, the rundown AI is very clearly in favor of AI, unequivocally, it seems. There's a lot to unpack. So, the one plot twist is that, I guess, getting exposed made them hire human band members. And my whole thing was, well, they never would have done that if they hadn't gotten caught using AI and people hadn't felt betrayed by the way it was presented as being human to begin with. They had to cover their ass there. That wasn't a noble thing. And so the rundown, they're pro AI, and pro AI people will bend and twist logic and humiliate themselves with the most asinine arguments and reasoning just to justify the existence of AI and the problems with AI. So they're whitewashing the hell out of this story if that's the case, calling it a job creation miracle when really it's someone covering their ass. And at the time, if the band had over 80,000 monthly listeners, well, it's lost a few thousand now. So this didn't actually help it necessarily, even though monthly listeners aren't always the most reliable metric. Now, the other plot twist, Dame, is that the band reached out to me and said, none of that's true. Like, that's not how it happened. So, again, it's
so the band that, so it did, the true part is it did start out as AI.
I don't know.
What is the false part? That the band didn't really get gigs, like the band that stepped in to play the AI music, they didn't get actual gigs?
They said, hey man, that's actually not what happened, but I can understand your viewpoint. I posted songs online for fun. It gained crazy traction. Fans loved it and begged for more. So I thought at that point I could make it real. So I did. So I guess they didn't get exposed for being AI. They just decided to do it to scale up the project. Which, again, whatever, it's gray area. I'm not going to sit here and beat a dead horse. People know where I stand on this stuff. I think it's deceptive if that part is true, that the person pretended they were humans and pretended they were from Tokyo and pretended that they had these identities and stories behind them. But my problem is more with the way the people that benefit from AI, like this company, the rundown, the way this stuff is being presented to the public and being whitewashed. And they're saying, oh, this is a great thing. This is amazing. There are people who are making CSAM, that's a word, an acronym I can't say. A lot of people are, the whole thing with Israel's prime minister and the AI thing, like there's so much awful application for AI right now. And they're marketing it as this noble thing where, yeah, you can look, forget the fact that Suno is still being sued. Forget the fact that they're stealing people's music and intellectual property and then selling access back to them. Forget all that. Look at this one story where this AI band actually hired real musicians. Isn't that great? This isn't actually replacing humans at all. And they can't even get their story straight because 1 second it's, oh, look at these artists, they're about to get replaced, adapt or die, and then it's, oh no, actually we're not replacing you. So it's a lot of confusion, it's a lot of shitty propaganda that just does its purpose is just to whitewash the awful things, awful implications of AI. And it's funny that they're using this ban as a case study when, one, I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but 78,000 monthly listeners isn't newsworthy at all. And in addition to that, if it's not real, according to the so-called creator, then it's just more fake shit coming from the AI propagandists, which I've come to expect. So it's just on a loop.
Yeah, to me, the only interesting thing that's different coming from this story is, maybe some A&Rs get some ideas on how they could potentially use AI, like testing some of their thoughts and opinions on the sound and direction of where an artist should take it. And maybe you can test it before an artist actually even tries it, to prove to an artist you're working with, like, hey, this is actually the sound that works or the direction that works, because you can create it yourself and maybe test it. But I just think that if you're going to use AI music, create AI characters, like, it should just be labeled, so that people know exactly. Because there's a lot of people that think they're supporting artists that have been struggling for a long time, that have built up the skill set to make music themselves without the use of AI. And come to find out, they're supporting somebody that just typed in a few prompts and created some music on Suno. That should be the first kind of fix until all the legal stuff gets sorted out. It should be a very first necessary step. Just label.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at Zanaya Monet, Rusty Dawn, Timberland, all of them. Not that Timberland's AI, but his whole AI artist / record label. All of these folks came right out from the gate and said, this is AI. They didn't just make up bios and stories for non-existent humans. They didn't. There's some weird cultural appropriation stuff wrapped up in all that. But Zanaya Monet was always AI, and she didn't hide that. And she's not at 1 million monthly listeners anymore. But she didn't drop the way, for example, Velvet Sundown did. Remember that Velvet Sundown was like the original Catfish AI band, where they presented as human, and then once people found out, there was some controversy, and they got some good press. But now they're at 140,000 monthly listeners. They were at 1 million, so they've dropped quite a bit. And I think people just don't like that shit. They don't like being deceived. Fans don't like being deceived. This might change over time. People might just expect that everyone is AI, all music is AI, all photography, all art. You're kind of seeing that happen now. But I think that's the future that AI bros want, because they love chaos and they resent art. But a lot of the artists that claim to be true musicians and true lovers of the art, if that's the future they want, then it's kind of like, what's even the point now of making human art if everyone just thinks it's going to be AI anyway? But then also on the flip side of that, currently the market is saying, we don't like that shit. We don't like being deceived. So at very least, just be upfront about it. I saw somebody, I don't know if it was a tweet to me or a comment on one of my videos, where they said, we're going to start a class action lawsuit on behalf of AI artists because we are being discriminated against by companies. So I guess AI bros are going to become a protected class, like like trans people or like ethnic minorities.